presentation. I think it's the SIGGRAPH 2019 one. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I don't know if his slides are available. Maybe just the scene files. But this presentation is somewhat useful if you're getting into cloth and like looking for a bit of the settings and where to put them and stuff. This is one of the only, it's like hard to find the physical equivalencies of some of these settings, because like the numbers that they give you are quite high. I'm not sure what kind of units or what kind of measurements and stuff like that they're using, but they have this, maybe if I switch this to, okay, that's just the ones down here. Yeah, so they do this with this exponential power. So to equate some of those stuff with the stiffness, this is just more or less, it's not actual values, but it's still pretty useful. Flash ATO, I'm pretty good, boss. I'm no boss. I'm merely the lecturer of the day. Jabram, how's it going? Bad itchy scrot. Have you looked into the ACES workflow? I feel like you'd explain it better than most and show how to use it properly with Houdini and Redshift. I was using it a little bit. I kind of was lapsed a little bit with my workflow. So I would say the best resource for that is Toadstorm. On his blog, he has this idiot's guide to ACES. That's a really good introductory thing. I'm a little bit hesitant to start using it too much. Just doing like, if you're working at a facility with commercials and for a pipeline and stuff like that, I think it makes a ton of sense. But if you're just doing smaller projects like to post to Instagram or things of that nature, it gets a little bit, it's just too much kind of overhead, I would say. Like trying to pull in textures off the internet, and I'd have to do a pre-conversion step and stuff like that. So that's why I'm a little bit behind the curve, or just not adopting it fully. So if you're using Redshift with the render view, get a nice lovely render of a grid right here. They do have under this stuff, like you could just go into OCIO and apply ACES right here. So that's basically how you would go about setting it up. You can also just work with LUTs, or what I usually do is using the photographic exposure. I'll kind of go in and you can do like somewhat tone mapping and things like this. So if you're just working like personally without a pipeline of needing to exchange files to other people doing other tasks and maintain like a proper color space, I would think it's not like the best advice, but if you're working quickly and just doing like style frames or trying to come up with concepts quickly, you could just do your tone mapping and manage things this way. You might run into some issues. Oh my God, Flash ATO, thank you for gifting. Let's go. Is doing that in the render view and updating the textures all that's needed to actually render ACES workflow images? I'm a little hesitant to give too much guidance with ACES because I haven't looked into it too much. There's a lot of like dark arts that happen with color transforms and going to different formats and even visualizing it properly and all that stuff. So I'm a little bit hesitant to talk about it too much. I don't know about the VFX Discord. There's also Saul. I think it's a Patreon post. I'm not sure if he has access to the full one, but he talks about setting up ASIS and a bit of the workflow in this, if you prefer videos or stuff like that. He'll go into Nuke and Maya, and then he also talks about Redshift, Houdini with Redshift as well. So yeah, there's the with Vellum, this John Moncrief video up there is a pretty good one. Also, if you're getting started with Houdini, or you're still like looking at trying to find examples and things like that, one of the good places to go look is if you just do assets, install asset library. So this is traditionally how you would install a Houdini digital asset, like a HDA file. But you can also use it to find their example files from the documentation. So if you just switch this to $HFS, it's like Houdini file system, or it's the Houdini install directory. And then if you just go to Houdini help, examples, nodes, SOP, and all the way at the bottom with Vellum, you would see they have Vellum Drape, Vellum REST-Blend, Vellum Solver, and then here they have a few different ones: hair, resolution target, varying friction, collision disable, collision ignore, dynamic attach. And these, instead of being like traditional tool like HDAs, they're just little example files that have been wrapped up into a folder like a HDA. So if you double click, you can see they have some sticky notes. Like these are built into, you could pull them in using the docs, the documentation on SideFX's website. But just going into that folder sometimes can be a good way just to check things out. I'll do that sometimes. This is just a quick way to pop open little example files, and they usually do a good job documenting them, commenting them, or just setting them up pretty quickly. So you get interesting little tips and stuff like that from them. So that's, you just go to asset, install asset library, and something like that for the path. I think I cropped out the R, but you get the idea. You go into different folders for DOP nodes and see what else they have, and just kind of explore it. Some nodes or some things are a little bit better documented or have more examples than others, but the Vellum stuff is pretty useful, I've found. Lokesh, how's it going? Yeah, so it's this file path, the $HFS, will work regardless of your operating system. This is just an environment variable, even with Windows or OS X or Linux, whatever. I think it's doing some stuff here, but whatever file system you're using, it will automatically point to the directory that you've installed Houdini at. So here you can see this is I don't know if they're dropping some papers. Some of them are pinned or something like that. And there's some nice documentation. It's just assets, install asset library. You got it, yeah. So, and then this is the path, if anyone is still looking for it. But you could, like $HFS doesn't show up, so you just have to type that in. Once you get into examples, you can see they have other shop if you're looking for shader stuff. I guess maybe they haven't made a matte one, but yeah, just even OBJ if you're doing, I don't know, like lighting or Rivet, some rigging, could find all kinds of weird stuff. nobody knows what's going on in there. This is a rivet. Where did it go? Oh, it's just already unlocked. So they're doing some rigging or something like that. There's all weird workflows and weird techniques inside of that folder. Some of it you might have to be a little bit careful with because it might be kind of antiquated or old. But it's generally a pretty good resource to have. Like even if you don't have internet, you still have it with Houdini. Lokesh, we're doing cloth, so we'll get into it right now. Yeah, so I'm just gonna start. I have a pretty much empty scene here. The camera. I'm gonna be working towards messing around with this vehicle. So I just pulled in the Lambo from the Pyro or the tire burnout. We'll be playing around with that a little bit later on, but just getting started with this cloth basics right now. So if you're really getting started, one of the things you can do is at the top here, as well as going into those example files, if you just find the Vellum shelf. My tools, I've set them just to text so that they take up less space. If you want it to look the same, I think it's maybe just like large icons, maybe large icons in text. Yeah, so you just do Vellum cloth, hit the object, hit enter, and it's setting up a bunch of stuff at the object level. I usually don't like to work that way, so that's why I usually just keep stuff in one container if I can. But they basically set stuff up so you have your modeling phase, your simulation phase, and then your post-process. Mr. Custom, it's primarily just for reusability, like this vehicle. Because I kept all the shaders, material assignments, and everything in one node, I can just grab it, copy and Control-C, Control-V from another file, and be up and running really quickly with it. So I don't have to, like this stuff, I don't like how you'd have to keep pointing these paths to new, just fixing them if you are managing like bigger scenes and just pulling in an example, it gets a little bit harder to do it. But yeah, I'll just get rid of that stuff and get rid of this for right now. If we really wanted to, we could get rid of the other, but I'll just leave it like this. Like what I'm saying is if we really wanted to, I could just get rid of that. So if we're working from scratch, you would just do Vellum configure. So they have different objects. In the past, or the YouTube tutorials, I was using the grain before to just make points. But for actual cloth, it's a similar idea, but it's just the points are connected by constraints. So this is when you start using this magenta, the pink input. This is your constraints, and then this is the geometry. And if you look at the top here, you can see they have all these presets to initialize things to. So that's pretty useful. You can keep stacking these together if you want. I'll just get started with a simple simulation just to start see stuff moving around. We'll do the Vellum solver. And just connect these and you're ready to go. I'll just bring up the timeline and it's falling, gravity, that's it. So yeah, this is my preferred method. If you can keep it simple and just use the Vellum solver, it's nice. You can build it out in the DOP network if you have to. But I try to keep stuff as simple as I can if needed. But that's why I'm doing this instead of working with the shelf tools. Basically because I just think that you're visualizing stuff in a more linear process instead of jumping around into different contexts and stuff like that. Saw people start with a planar patch for cloth. What do you think? In the documentation, there's some guides for topology, like tris or quads or stuff like that might work better than others. I think it depends. Like, you might want to look at that. There's certain materials or certain aspects why you might want to use like different topology and stuff like that. So what I mean by that is, like, you just do one layer of subdivision, you go into the loop, you could just do the crease to get rid of the rounding. Sometimes, like, when you fold stuff, these tris will bend or wrinkle better. But if you're folding it the other way, like, I could do a somewhat quick example here. So then the super nice thing about this is just you're able to, like, prototype and work really quickly. So I'll just make the tube long, thin, go the other way, and just move it down a little bit. You probably see what I'm up to here. So this last tab you can use for collisions. Oof. So this happens because this tube I've created is just set to primitive. So the Vellum solver just thinks of it as the 1 point. It doesn't know about this primitive data type. We go to polygon, and you want to end the caps so that it's watertight or closed. You don't want to leave this as like a hollow tube. So now we have our curtain rod. Yeah, so remeshing post-process is nice. So what I was talking about with the folding, if I just rotate this 45 degrees, you can see, because we did triangles there, we get really gnarly folding that happens in that direction. Because it's just, the mesh is very difficult to bend or crease in that way, so you get you're gonna always get artifacts. You can subdivide, remesh, and smooth and stuff after the simulation, but like, you want to try to get things looking as close or as good as possible in the sim. If I just turn that off, you can see there's like some visible artifacts, diamonds or whatever from doing it the topology that way. We just turn off, even though we have lower resolution grid with less faces, we can describe that fold just easier. We get less like artifacts or tearing or stuff like that. When you set up these grids, there's different ways you can do it. You could try like alternating triangles. So that's maybe can help you like get around some of those issues, but it just depends. So you're saying planar pleat or planar patch? I think this, I haven't used it, but it might be for setting up. It looks like it's a tool they made for setting up like draped skirts or tablecloths or stuff like that, with the pleats is like folding and tucking it inside of itself so that it's tighter at the top and then like unfurls at the bottom. There is this planar patch. I haven't heard too much about using this kind of thing. It looks like it's just giving you a pretty standard like remeshed grid. So you could always remesh before. Vegan Nuts was talking about remeshing after. It's a good idea as well. So because this, I don't know what happened here. Maybe you have some n-gons or topology issues. You would use the clean node to fix that. Yeah, the Vellum post process is nice as well. So because this is somewhat randomly distributing the triangles across the surface, you'll get less like repetitive artifacts. But it depends like on the type of material you're doing and the type of collision object and circumstances like that. So if I just go back to quads, I think I just leave this at whatever the default was, quadrilaterals. You go up pretty high. This Vellum stuff is nice because it's pretty fast compared to the older cloth implementations that side effects had. Generally, I'll work with quads unless I have to end up switching or stuff like that. But I think generally I work with quads unless I really start running into artifacts or problems or stuff like that. You could look on their documentation. I think somewhere they have some notes or stuff like that about. So if you just go to Houdini 18, this thing is broken. It's pretty slow. All right. Sometimes it's faster just to do it with the internet. You just go to side effects, support, documentation, Houdini 18, and I think just using or dynamics, Vellum. So I don't know if they have, I know they used to have it. It might be like tips and troubleshooting. I don't know if they still advise it, but I generally, from my experience, there's something that Matt Estella posted on CG Wiki. There's like an environment variable he advised to add to speed up the help. I've tried it before, but it didn't really work too well for me. But you might have a better luck with it. I might have had other. I don't remember which. Yeah, I'm not sure which section it would be in. But yeah, I think for whatever reason they switched to like their internal server or something, and it made the help a little bit slower. I don't know. It's a different point of contention he had there. If you search, you might be able to find it. So yeah, and then the last one is the Vellum post process. It might just be inside of Vellum. I don't think that's it. Just Vellum post process. So there's some special things that this node can do to kind of alleviate some of those artifacts. If you're doing tearing and stuff like that as well, this node can help figure out some of that stuff. Kind of like if you're doing flip fluids, there's like the flip fluid surface, particle surface node. This is like a similar idea that you're taking your simulation cache and just filtering it or finessing it and doing things like that to fix little errors and things like that. So the way that this Vellum solver is set up here, it's like a high-level kind of solver or tool. So what they're trying to do is just one of the advantages is that you can use this without having Yeah, this is the environment variable, the Houdini external help browser. So instead of using their WebKit GUI or whatever, it will use your operating system's browser, whatever your default browser is. So one of the reasons to work like this instead of a DOP network is that you don't need an effects license. If you're just using Houdini outside of effects, so again, just go back to the side effects, products, compare. So if you just have Houdini core, you can still use the Vellum solver, but you wouldn't be able to go into a DOP context. So it won't let you modify things inside of here if you just have a Houdini core license. So this way, if you're a lighting artist or someone who just is not traditionally doing too much DOPs, you're still able to use it. It also just makes it more approachable to people. So again, working like linearly here, staying at the SOP level and not jumping around too much. All the settings are just right up here as main kind of parameters. So, and it doesn't have complete control. Like sometimes you have to build it out a little bit. So with with my grains particle tutorial, I ended up having to build it out because I wanted to use the override like some specific settings that didn't get promoted. Alex, how's it going? So that's like, this is a somewhat simplified version, which makes it a little bit more approachable as well. You're not overwhelmed with like the DOP context and a bunch of different nodes. So yeah, by default, just has gravity. You're trying to achieve the Pixar shading style. You're doing humans, like a human skin is the Pixar. I heard some of the old, the new Toy Story is supposed to look amazing. I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, I don't know if it's just a lot of like art directed maps and stuff. But even their lighting is super art directed sometimes. Like they'll put point lights everywhere and negative values in some of the point lights or stuff like that. They work a lot more like a painter or like a, it gets very, very difficult. Yeah, the air quality here is a bit of a mess. So I think they have some warnings not to go outside too long, but been somewhat of a yearly occurrence or somewhat, I guess, the last 3 years or something. It looks like we're okay for now. Yeah, it's like an old school lighting workflow a bit, but sometimes to get that style for animation and like the rules are somewhat broken in terms of PBR or physically accurate or whatever. I've heard some people were watching the original Toy Story recently and they were like, what's going, I guess some of the textures they weren't that happy with, like certain shots of the RC car, they thought the texture frequencies or stuff didn't look that good. But yeah, it's a lot more difficult because you rely less on just like bounce lighting it's a lot more cheating and stuff like that. So yeah, you just can change things up here. Usually with cloth, I don't go too much into the lower level solving integration things and technical stuff like that. Big Hero 6. Yeah, that's a pretty interesting movie just in terms of like a technical standpoint. They did a lot of work with their internal renderer to support like before USD and all that stuff, so they were able to support the entire city. It's kind of like a hybrid San Francisco, Tokyo. Forget the name. It's like San Francisco or some weird mashup of the names. But yeah, usually I'll just stick with the forces tab and then the solver. Like even modifying collision passes, I don't do too much of that with cloth. So if you want custom forces besides just these directional wind and gravity, you can double click and go in here. It's a little disorienting because it snaps you like a few levels down into this folder. Hyperion was the first movie that they debuted the renderer for, I believe. So yeah, Big Hero 6 was the first, I believe it was the first time they used it. So what this is just a shortcut so that you can use and modify forces. So you add pop force here. I could make my own gravity. The same thing should happen that we're doing. We're basically applying the same idea, but instead of that, we can also just do the curl noise. So for folding cloth or wrinkling it up, just get interesting wind behaviors with this noise. All of the pop nodes, pop force nodes or pop nodes in general will work with cloth because it's a point-based dynamics simulation. So all of the pop nodes just modify point properties or particle properties, so even cloth will work. So this axis forces as well, a pretty nice one. I think I've used it before for different things on the stream, but you can use it for doing like spinning cloth and get interesting effects. So if I leave the orbit speed, this isn't really too dialed in. I think you want lift to go around the torus. Gorilla Renderer. I've heard of a couple people using it, but I haven't seen it used too often. Hopefully using other renderers will get easier and easier. Like with the Hydra stuff, someone was already porting cycles into Houdini with the Hydra USD stuff. But if I was to suggest, if you're just getting into Houdini, I would say stick with what's easiest accessible to you. This done? Yeah, I mean, it's done in the sense that it's released, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily done. In like, I was reading the subdivision and some things like that are still like being developed or still being worked on. Omega Beta. So I mean, yeah, if you're interested in like testing out renders and stuff, I would say go for it. But if you have a like college project or something, I might say to hold off a little bit with it. So yeah, if you make this sphere a little bit bigger, you can get interesting cloths. Very cool looking motions. So if you're lifting up a blanket, can can be cool, and then doing the vortex style with this pop axis forces is really cool. Yeah, Solaris and Karma is really cool. I haven't Solaris is more of what I'm interested in, just because it's allows it, like Redshift is in another Omega Beta phase with Solaris. So you have to set some environment variables and things like that to get it working. But all that stuff should definitely make the rendering, shading workflow and everything like that pretty just take a lot of the headache out of it. Like, you could try out different renderers and get the same results pretty quickly, instead of right now you kind of have to like make separate shaders for everything. So USD has some mechanisms to set material properties. There's also like Material X that I think works with USD. But all that stuff is super nice. Karma, I'm not too sure about. I would really start looking into that if it supported GPU. But for me right now, just with a single workstation, it's too slow to use a CPU renderer for everything. Just for simple things, I'll use the CPU render, just Mantra, because I know it already pretty well. But I don't use it for animations or too often. Yeah, I think they've mentioned they're working on Karma on the GPU, but we'll see if it does support everything and when that happens. So yeah, you could just do kind of a vortex with this. I'm layering both of these. It's a good way to work if you're controlling different forces. You're kind of compositing them like this. It's just the traditional method, but it's just a less intimidating DOP context. So yeah, if you click on these grayed out areas, you can see a bit of like what's actually going on. So they've pre-built this template, and it's grayed out because we're inside of a locked digital asset, but they just allow you to access this forces folder that's editable. So they're saying to do forces, you want to apply per point forces, and then you can modify the constraints as well inside the simulation. So just doing Vellum constraint property. And the main reason to do this would be if you wanted to animate your constraints over the duration of your simulation. So I think like just stiffness, we go just back up to our top level. With stiffness, we've already set it right here using the Vellum configure node. And the scaling you have to pay a little bit of attention to. So it's basically saying to make it a really big number at the end. These actually get stored on the constraints. If you want to visualize or look at the constraints, you can connect a null or do some other stuff to look at that input. If I look at the primitive attributes under stiffness, you can see it's actually set to like a really high floating point number, because that scaling is happening at the end. So if I go back here with stiffness, you can see that same scaling isn't applied. So it should make this kind of break the stiffness of things. Like it's a lot more stretchy. Here it's maintaining the edge lengths and stuff like that. How is the infamous car burnout scene going? It's going all right. I actually brought in the vehicle from it. Could take a look at it if you want real quick. I brought in the vehicle from it today to maybe play around with the cloth falling on it. But yeah, we jumped in on Wednesday with it, redid some of the lighting and shading and stuff like that for everything. There's some notes we talked about with the look and motion of the smoke. Yeah, the taillights. So what we did is we broke out we broke out the taillights so that these are just like emissive geometries, and then there's hidden point lights that are illuminating the environment, so it was making the renderer less noisy. Like, I think this was just taking a minute per frame or something. There's a bit of noise in some areas, but it was rendering pretty quickly. I was noticing some of the puddle, the like wobbliness I added looks a bit weird. In some areas, it's like the frequency of it is messed up. But yeah, we'll be back in this one day. Just needed a bit of a break from it. Maybe like once a week or something is a good pace to go along on it. It's nearly done, I think. It just needs a little bit more love. Another pass on the simulation. Still need to work on the lighting. CG Rockstar had some good tips to get it looking more professional and stuff like that. So yeah, with this constraint property is useful because it's just a very convenient way to modify, or you can keyframe this stuff to animate things. So if you're transitioning between materials, not even modifying stiffness, but even like pinning constraints and stuff like that, releasing constraints, you can do all of it with the constraint property node without having to do too much vex or stuff like that. So yeah, it's a little confusing to get started, like jumping in and working in just this area, but they're basically doing it just to simplify. It's like a shortcut for you. So if you want to modify more of the cloth, you can keep layering more of these vellum constraints. And if you just move it here, it will pick up the collision like that, but it's okay. It will just kind of pipe it through. It's just, you don't need to worry about it. You're doing the vellum with Vellum Solver in SOPs, or doing the sim in DOPS. So I'm using this Vellum Solver in SOPs, but it's talking about it a little bit. So it's just a wrapper or a template for using the DOP network. So it depends a lot what you're doing. If you need interaction with other things, or like to really go deep into stuff, you might want to build things out fully with a DOP network yourself. But if you're just doing like a blanket on a sofa for a quick modeling exercise, or basic tasks, I would work this way, as it's a bit simpler and even more reusable. Like to transport this setup and use it elsewhere, it's just easier for other people to understand because it's a more predefined workflow. The RBD SOP solver, I don't use it as much. I use this more because there's a lot more things to manage, but I think I just need to spend more time looking into the RBD SOP solver. It's a good idea to kind of give you like a predefined workflow. This gets out of hand if everyone's managing the constraints and all that stuff with their own methods and things like that. So like even the changes that I did in the network editor so that the constraints get a different wire color, like that's already super useful. Before, 2 or 3 years ago, everyone was just like doing their own setups for constraints, and depending on whose file you were looking at, or whose workflow you're using, like people would set up constraints differently. So it's a bit nicer that everything's somewhat standardized in this fashion. So you can use another constraint node here just to apply additional control to things. So not even changing the material behaviors, but adding pins. So like this icon, the logo is showing. Yeah, it's a bit more artist friendly to work this way. It's also just easier to get up and running. Like there's less clicking and stuff like that. So even like the Pyro one is a good idea. I don't usually use it because I'm doing more custom OpenCL stuff, but to simplify your setups and make them like more approachable to everyone is kind of the end goal. Unless you're just doing like learning or R&D or stuff like that, but for like everyday stuff, it's good to have it set up this way. So yeah, you could do different groups. I'm not using the sparse solver with Pyro because it doesn't support OpenCL, at least yet. So it's only working with CPU. So I found even though it is sparse and optimized in that sense, it's still slower in the end for me. Just because if you're doing a big container, even having extra space on the OpenCL GPU simulation, can churn through it quicker. So yeah, we'll just try points. I'll just type in 0 here. If you click on this, I think it should highlight it. Maybe not. Just give it a play and see what happens. I think I'll just add gravity back. Yeah, I mean, the graphics card I have is pretty next level, but I've worked on workstations and at places and even before with a 1080 or even a 1070, like anything with 8 gigabytes of VRAM, you can get really good results and probably beat the speed of the yeah, it's the same card. It depends, like the it's the same car. Oh, the price. Yeah, I mean, it can be. I think I think mine was just like 4K or something like that. But if it's what you're going to be doing as it's like just a high-end computer or workstation. So if you're doing an effects artist, you're not going to be doing as much rendering or lighting, but you still need to do quick turnarounds. It kind of makes sense. 10K. I don't know. I bought it on eBay. But maybe the price changes, like all that stuff fluctuates pretty frequently just because of like machine learning, data mining, and stuff like that. But yeah, I think for me, I had bought like an OEM one, like the original equipment manufacturer or whatever, and it wasn't too bad. So yeah, you just do a pin. Yeah, I wouldn't have paid 10K for it. That's a little bit ridiculous. You can explicitly set these like that. So permanent is one option. That won't update during the simulation. I think if you want it to update, you have to switch to, it might work with permanent. Let's give it a try. So yeah, it looks like it will work with permanent. You can update it and move it around if you want to do like pulling the cloth. Whoop. And you're revealing your masterpiece, your fine statue, or something like that. Could even go with that expression so that it yanks it up. You can see with the stiffness here, or maybe it's like substeps, is things are just moving too fast, so it's kind of blowing up. But it's some issues there with the tangling and things like that. So that's another like substepping issue. But if I was to really fix it or something, I would just probably change the animation speed. So yeah, the 2080 Ti I think is a pretty good combination right now. It's like 11 gigabytes. I saw some news, some leaks or something with the new card. The one aspect of it looked insane. It was like 3 slots. It's like takes up your entire computer. So under this group, Founders Edition is 3 slots. There's one that's the price for it didn't look that bad, but yeah, I think whichever one is going to have the most memory is going to be 3 slots. And then there was one that was like half the price, that looked a little bit more reasonable. So when you make these constraints, we go back to our spreadsheet. When you're layering them like this, you can see it's setting the type differently for all the constraints it's making. So I think this is gonna need a bigger case. I'm gonna need a bigger power supply unit as well. I think maybe this, let me take a look. I'm not sure if I'm just having trouble finding the pin constraint under the type over here. Let me try turning. So I guess it should be at the very end of the list. Sometimes they aren't called pin. Sometimes this name changes internally, like it goes by different names. I think you go like inside of this or whatever and poke around. I think you can see each of these might be a different, somewhere in here you could see different type names. It might be in Vex or it might be kind of hidden. They're using more technical names like the dihedral constraint or stuff like that. But I was just looking to see what it was, because it should be adding something to the geometry. Let me take another look. It's definitely let me try this. Let me get rid of the group, just have it being set to everything. I think it might actually store it on the as an attribute over here, right? Let me go back. This is why it gets a bit confusing, because the things are split out. There's another reason why I usually just keep these set up as simple as possible, like going outside of their workflow. Yeah, so it's setting it this way with the glue to animation, mass, and p-scale. So I think you have to be sometimes a bit careful with that. If we go to soft, then I believe it will set it up using a traditional primitive constraint. Yeah, it's a little... you just have to make a note of it. It's a little out of the ordinary. Yeah, so now this way, doing a soft constraint, it's... yeah, they set it... It's kind of the same way that I was constraining the grains in the sand tutorial. They're doing the same idea if you do a hard constraint, where it's just setting the stopped pin to animation, and then the solver knows to just override it and move it. But this soft, it will actually create the constraint. And looking at the spreadsheet again, you can see all the way at the bottom, there's the pin, and pin orient is just to remember the rotation of it if you're telling it to. So like, that's if you have, I don't think with cloth it makes a big difference, but if you're doing hair or vellum fur, orientation pin type will try to keep it like aligned to the root or the surface it's pins to. So yeah, we're back on track. So what I was gonna say is, clicking here, going to the spreadsheet, you can find the type name. So this pin constraint got created. And then if I want to modify it here, if I do group, you can do @type equals pin. You might be able to, let me get rid of that. So it looks like it's just set up ones for bend and stretch. Yeah. So those are the actual groups that are set up, but you can use this group syntax this way, and then either remove or broken. Maybe we need to do it with remove. Then it will get rid of the pin. So again, it's something that maybe should, if there is an easier way, let me know, or maybe there should just be an easier way in general. But yeah, if you want to do activation, if the frame is greater than 12, then this process will run or the constraint will be removed. So this is one way you can do like a Kleenex, a tissue drop. If you're making that. My dream is always to work on a like Charmin toilet paper commercial, like just rolling down the stairs very elegantly, like unfurling. Sometimes I just want to work on the simplest commercials, like a toothpaste. You just have like a week or a month to just do like the get the viscosity exactly right. So yeah, if you're doing a handkerchief, a handkerchief commercial or something, a scarf, this could be a cool setup for that. Don't you? Does anyone else have the same You just want to do I don't know, you get good setups. Like you could corner the market. You could be the go-to guy for like paper towel, toilet paper, Kleenex, all of the little things. Like Man versus Machine and all those companies did with the sneakers, the footwear game. You could do the same thing with Kleenexes and stuff. So yeah, just use this. Do maybe frame 45. Diapers. That's a super. That's like the top tier level. So now we're just doing more of a delay release or whatever like that. The sneaker stuff was actually pretty cool because like if you look through other reels and stuff, it seems like all of the really top tier advertising studios have put in their own spin on the sneakers, like Buck, Korb, Universal Everything, probably missing a few names, but Nike kind of shopped it around or moved around for different specialties of different companies. But yeah, the Man versus Machine ones are really S tier. Expanza, yeah, they have some good ones as well. Yeah, Future Deluxe. So basically the reason to use this I'm showing right here is releasing or removing constraints, or also animating or adjusting material properties or constraint properties over time. So that's a pretty cool thing to work with. So I might move forward a little bit and trying to think. So yeah, so maybe before I move forward, I'll just go one little bit further. You could just hold Alt and drag and drop this. I'll just clear out what's happening inside of here. And maybe this time go with the box. And just do subdivide. And again, you just do override crease weight. That will treat the edges like they're hard. I'll just keep the same cloth, the basic settings. And do one more set of constraints. And then this one, we'll just talk about pressure quickly. So this is different than the Pyro pressure field. Basically this is, just turn off gravity. This is saying internally like the air pressure pushing outwards. So this is the best way to do like inflation and really cool effects like that. So we'll just switch this. You set the stiffness and rest length scale. This is how much it will like adhere to that. So with just a rest length of 1, it will keep the edges the same. But as soon as you start making that rest length scale bigger, then you'll start to get some kind of cushions or air or stuff happening inside of it. There he goes. some fattening. And then I think based off of some of these initial settings, like if I reduce the stretch stiffness, then it will start to get even more wild. So like if you really need something to get a lot bigger, I think you can do it. I've definitely done it before. Might just have to go even bigger with these rest length scales. But yeah, you can go pretty wild with some of that stuff. And then I think as soon as you start really going in and mixing and matching some of this, then you can get really really nice looking constraints. So I'm trying to think what to do. So I'm gonna do a subdivide, one layer like that, and I'm gonna try making a group of just the edges. And then let me see if this group still exists. We go to edges. Should still exist. Got hooked to dynamic constraints. Talking about creating constraints in the simulation. So I think one of the things I've done before is just the group transfer. Maybe I'll switch this to what happens with just points. All right. We did it. Which advanced Vellum workflow class was it? But I know that there's a couple, there's like a John Lynch one, and then there's a Jeff Late one that the side effects people have made. So if I just do resample here, then there's more points for this to transfer. Pretty cool. Maybe go a little bit bigger. Something like that. Updating them to have dynamic stickiness. Yes, I think that's the one that was in the examples. So at the start of the stream, I had gone into the hell is going on? The example files that come with. Let me get rid of this. And I think they have a stickiness. I was looking at one that was pretty cool. But yeah, it gets you addicted to dynamics really quickly. Let's see. Zoom in here. I don't know how this got a bit jumbled up. Let's see what happens. Looks like it still is working. So what you can do is keep mixing and matching. So I'll come back here with the pin, but instead of the group 0, we'll try the group 1. And now we get the interesting compartments and kind of stitching or seams or stuff like that. So making like the floating toys or pillows or weird geometries like this when you start mixing and matching like pin, or you could do it with stiffness as well, groups. That's when the vellum stuff, at least for me, starts to get really fun. You're able to set up, use all the SOP tools to define and group the attributes and physical properties of the cloth. Let's go maybe up to 5. This is slowing down. Getting too gonna pop. Oof. Sometimes with the pressure, when you really have it super big, all the air internally decides to go into one compartment for some reason. I haven't found a good workflow or fix to that, but just to try different settings. Usually it's like when you're cranking the values too high. So yeah, it's super controllable. Just reducing the distance there. So you can see this is like you're sewing or you're stitching things, and like certain parts of it are stronger than others. So because I reduce the distance, like only every other or every 10th point is belonging to the group. So then you get some interesting variation. The whirly noise, or which step? Afterwards? At the end? This one? To drive the pattern of inflation. I'm not sure what the best way is to set that up. Oh, so you're thinking of the there's a lot of yeah, I could see how to do that. Yeah, so if you do like let's just copy this over as well. So yeah, if we have our subdivided stuff, we do the whirly. I think we're gonna try the other one maybe. I don't know. I think either of these could work. Yeah, I think this one. Maybe just the center. Yeah, we just don't want to center the noise. So yeah, and then this way, I think just group everything that isn't whirlied, so we can make our whirly, make the group, and transfer spatially. Maybe we need to bring this up. Might need to go into the points. Press the 9 button. All right. So now we can define the stitched areas based off of this whirly noise. Maybe something like that. So I think we can just keep everything else the same. Just hold Alt, select everything. And just go turn off, press the 9 key, get rid of the group. Give this one a play. Woo. So this is closer to the man versus machine look, right? They're doing a lot more organic inflation patterns and stuff like that. Maybe going lower with the element size. Yeah, I think there was a Intagma tutorial as well recently doing some slim stuff like this with this kind of pattern, right? But yeah, I think doing this group, just finding a good distance threshold. Manually painted, that's a good idea as well. Yeah, however you want to do it, like, that's what I was saying earlier, because this is SOPs, you're unlimited with your possibilities. You can do texture maps. You can try something else here. If I just do like a circle, copy 2 points. Got these mixed up. So I'm just gonna make a bunch of little like rubber bands, kind of. Maybe have it open. Just do the point generate. We'll make like 50 curves, and you do the randomize, then we can get them going spun around differently. Do that. You'd see this direction right now is only happening like on a specific axis, or it's biased along a specific direction. So if you just switch this, the direction or orientation, then you like a uniform distribution. And then we could just do the ray. And I think it'd just do minimum. So maybe we don't want as many. So we kind of have a Voronoi style pattern, and just do the same idea. Let's see what we get. Looks like these circles might need to be resampled. You just have smaller segment lengths, and you'll be able to group more of the points. Let's take a look. Oof. Control Z. So be careful, if everything's selected, it will try to attach it. There you go. It was already like, my timeline was already trying to go through the simulation a little bit. So yeah, you could get another kind of result. You could even do some wireframing or something like that with these. Like you're tying up you're bundling your fabrics or something like that. So pretty cool. The pressure, inflation stuff is just like endlessly amusing or fun to play around with. Maybe we want this. I'm just gonna fix this up real quick. So if we get the point intersection normal, then we could do a peak later on. to move these ropes away from the surface a little bit. Popping an inflated balloon. It depends a lot. Like, it's one of those effects where it depends a lot on like the slow motion, like how you're trying to show it off or film it or stuff like that, just because there's so many different ways of doing it. But I think they have some fracturing tools and stuff like that in place that I would give a try to. And then you should be able to like fracture or split them up that way. I haven't tried out the vellum fracture stuff too much, but that would be my first thing to try. But I think it's, maybe it doesn't have it right there. So they do it with the vellum struts and welds to connect them once they're split apart. I think actually in that examples folder that I was talking about at the start of this stream, I think they have a bit of fracturing and welds and stuff going on in there. So just go back to the assets, install asset library. This is the $HFS Houdini help. They have a vellum folder, but I think it just has like text documents or something. So examples, nodes, SOP, and vellum solver. So yeah, I think the simple weld, if I remember properly. So they've painted a curve or drawn just a single slice and set it up that way. And then these welds hold the cloth together. And using this post-process, it does like the normal shading and stuff like that. So I would, like just generic balloon popping, I would start with this, but it depends if you're doing like a super slow-mo, there's some wild balloon references and stuff. You've ever seen those photography? Take a look. Right? Get this with the a single vellum solver. This is your favorite song of the playlist? Sometimes I skip it because I feel like it's a little too there's too many vocals, it gets too wild. But yeah, this is like super high speed photography, maybe cornstarch or something else in the balloon. But yeah, if you look around at some of the high speed balloon, and then there's the water balloons as well. So like if you're after some of this specific looks, vellum might not be the way to go. But yeah, it depends a lot what you're after. So this one guy, Fabian Offner, he does some pretty cool high-speed photographies, kind of like that stuff. Put his stuff in there. Yeah, so he's done the colors. You could do like some of this stuff with 2D fluid solvers, maybe, and play around with it. I don't know where. I guess that you have to find the other work somewhere else because he took it off. Some of it might be using some CG stuff or something. I guess not. He's modeling all that stuff with a kit or something. But yeah, if you search for Fabian Offner, I think it's just called like Vanishing Beauty or something. You could find that balloon, maybe some documentation of his process or something as well. I tried to do a balloon with Houdini when I was first learning it. There wasn't vellum. There wasn't a lot of of stuff available, so I think I did a lot of like hacking and things. Let me see if I can find it deep in the archives. Yes, it was like 8 years ago. I was doing weird stuff to have this thing inflate or whatever. Where did it go? It didn't pop? Maybe it was as part of my demo reel? What the hell is going on? Yeah, I think it was part of this. How to do the hose? I think I did it with chops, actually. You could do it much easier now with like just attribute transfer or something. But yes, so I think what I did here was a Voronoi fracture to get it. And then I might have been doing cloth or something, but basically just doing shrinking, like making the stiffness, the edge lengths shrink down over time to get it to unpeel or whatever like that. So yeah, that's if you want to do like a very basic kind of balloon effect, but it seems like the majority of people looking to do balloon simulations there after like the high speed, more sexy, interesting stuff. All right. So we'll just clean these networks up a little bit so that they aren't as confusing. And what I'll do now is just do like a simpler kind of drape. We'll just grab this stuff. And what I had done with this file is I brought in the vehicle from where did it go? From that burnout thing. So I'm just going to do a quick drape effect or whatever, using vellum and using some of the stuff that we talked about earlier. So I think just this, just everything right here. Use this for the collision. So I'll just copy this node and bring it into my cloth network. So I just need to update this path to go up another level and then into the vehicle folder. And then this is the Pact Alembics. We had talked about doing the conversion process a while back. So even if you're doing surface-based collisions, like this model is going to be made up of probably too many. It's a bit high res. So we could try to get that using less polygons or less resolution. We were talking about just doing the for each primitive. So this will just run over these. And then if you do the convex full, it's just like shrink wrap. Because they're packed, we just need to do a conversion inside of it. So now when I bring them all back in, we have a little less points. Looks like the mirrors are going to be a bit of an issue. So because those are members of the same packed alembic, they get shrink wrapped together. I think what we ended up doing was, if you do this conversion, and then if you do the connectivity, with this set to primitive, then each 3D connected island or piece gets its unique class attribute. So then you can set this, instead of running over each primitive, we can go with the class. And then the shrink wrap can fix those mirrors a little bit better. So this is good enough to get started with collisions. Can just move the sheet a bit higher. Looks like it just needs a bit higher. We could also make it smaller. And I believe on the Vellum solver, let's just grab one of those. So I believe on the Vellum solver, there's an extra setting for ground plane. Yeah, so under this collisions, you can just do this checkbox and you'll get a ground plane. So just give it a play, nothing happens. Let's make sure we don't have any forces or things removing constraints in there. And then we just need to do gravity. I think you could do control middle mouse button to get back to the defaults, or you can as well just do right click, revert to defaults. So already it's kind of looking somewhat nice, not professional, but it's a good starting point. If you want to get rid of the guide stuff, sometimes I don't like to look at it, like the blue things. You just do a null node underneath everything. So one thing I have found pretty important, let me just save this. I'll just call it Vellum Drape. One of the things that I have found, I think John Moncrief talks about it a little bit in his masterclass, the settings talk that he was giving, is that changing this mass up here does affect the overall like folding, the ability to fold and wrinkle and stuff with the cloth. So with the drape situation, that's pretty important. So it would be nice to save snapshots and do a test process a little bit. I guess I could do it just with this screen capture thing. Let's just go to frame 48. We just have this mass density at 0.1. So let's take a screenshot like that. And just put it on the desktop. So now if we go a bit higher, maybe up to 10 with the mass, go to frame 48 again, you just get this picture. Do a side by side. You can see that the wrinkles do in fact change. So before you even go into stretch and bend stiffness and stuff like that, just changing the mass is a good initial go-to to change like the feel or the properties or the wrinkliness of the cloth. Sometimes you can see it's like they're trying to make more wrinkles than the cloth has resolution to. OMG.exe, how's it going? So, like I was saying, you could see it's trying to make more wrinkles than our cloth topology supports. So we might want to just up-res or go with a higher resolution. Yeah, of course, I'm happy to share workflows, offer advice, do a bit of everything. So we'll just go up to like 512 by 512. And then we can go back to frame 48. So it'll be a bit slower with the higher topology, the higher resolution mesh. Where'd you get this OWL all access pass? That was a convention? Chris Arn has this nice charity one that I like, the snowflake one. You guys were talking about the lollipop stuff yesterday. I saw Arvid is working on a similar tutorial idea. It's like something happens in the air and everyone has similar ideas. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's the algorithm. There's something that's secretly like biasing us to all. It's like 2 weeks ago, everyone was starting to make chocolate eat sweet kind of things, and now the topic is like slowly moving, it seems like. You just watched Jurassic Park. It's the algorithm, it's at play. It's just slightly influencing us to But yeah, this kind of effects is pretty cool. We were just looking at that tentacle thing that was inside of like the lollipop or whatever yesterday. But yeah, Arvid is he's on Twitch as well. I think you can grab it from this link tree. If you're not following him, give him a follow. He does some stuff in Houdini. He uses Arnold for Houdini. He was a Hulai heavy hitter. I think he did all of them. He's up there with Jabram, the Iron Man. So yeah, it looks like we just have like 30 seconds left. I'm just gonna fill up my drink. It's almost there. 5 more seconds. Boom. There it is. So it looks like our mass messed stuff up. Or maybe the wrinkles even got too high of a frequency for it. But overall, it's like perfectly clinging to the body of the car. So we might want to go back. You could either change the resolution or also reduce the mass density. So I'm going to do a bit of both to try to work a little bit more quickly. But if you were doing this yourself, I'd recommend actually doing some screenshots or some tests, like I was doing at the start. I was looking at some references for this kind of stuff, but it seems a bit all over the place. Like different photography there's different materials people were using. Some of them were like perfectly clinging to the vehicle, and others were a bit more wrinkly and draped. So yeah, it looks like this is still a bit too silky. I might just go to a density of 1. And then maybe bend. You could either increase stiffness here, or you could see that they've added a multiplier to go down and just use like a fractional 1/1000th. I think it's a 1/1000th. If you just go up 1 decimal place, then that's making the stiffness stronger. So the reason they do that is just so you don't have to like work inside of this parameter and keep adding or removing zeros around or whatever. So yeah, let's try Tenet. That's a new thing coming out. I haven't heard of it. This is the one with it's Christopher Nolan. They're doing it direct to digital. They're gonna release it in theaters though, or they're... Should be out in a couple of days. There's the one Netflix one with the... What was the one guy's name that was in like Looper or whatever? I don't remember his name. They do a really interesting like slow motion. Maybe it's One Punch Man? No, it's an anime. Yeah, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. But yeah, I've been getting that from the algorithm. They just keep showing this one. I think this is it. Trying to see if it exists in GIF format. Could find it. This is a pretty suspect website. All right, just go here maybe. There it is. Yeah, there's this one effect that it caught my eye that was pretty cool. Whatever trailer I found on, I think it was just on Twitter, they showed it to me. It was pretty interesting. Just thinking about how I would do that effect. Just not only like with the deformation, it might be a vellum sim, but there's also some interesting like material transition. It's kind of hard to see from this resolution, but it like changes to like a basketball kind of texture or something like rubber. It's pretty cool. But this, I guess that's it's kind of how they're making movies now. Is like the effect is going to be more of a reason to go see it than like the actual story or content or whatever. So yeah, let's I think I want this stiffness to be a bit higher on the stretch as well. Maybe on this go up another level, and then the mass just go back down to 0.1. So one of the things that's kind of a pain, the nose from Looper. There's a shot or something with the nose in it. Who was his fake nose? To be like Bruce Willis. Prosthetic nose. So let's see what where this is. I don't know if my resolution got too high. Maybe my settings are a bit of a mess. I might just go back to 1 for that stiffness and go back down with the bend. This is one of the things with cloth, or just with all the they tried to make it better with vellum, like as you change the resolution to keep somewhat the same result, but just generally, like, there's going to be specific things you like at a certain topology or certain resolution, and then it will just be harder to maintain it or preserve certain aspects of it at higher resolutions. So I might try, one thing I'm seeing is like the thickness. You make this edge length scale a bit bigger. You can visualize it. This is like how thick the cloth is going to be. So I'm going to make it a little thicker. Sometimes that can give you some better folds. And you try maybe just going pretty high with this density, the mass. Before we were at 0.1 or 10, I'll just try going a bit higher. So I'm thinking it might be this like stretching and bending that's happening. We just have too much stretching and bending, so that's why originally I was bringing those values up. Starting to get some of the little fine wrinkles. So yeah, what I'm gonna do is go up with the stiffness and with the bend. So you could again work either way with these drop downs or just the boxes there. It looks like we still have another minute before it finishes caching. Finishes the simulation. All right, here it comes. So gonna, oof. So it looks like it's getting a little bit better in that area. I'm still gonna let it play. See if when this stuff folds in, if we get still some of the, some more of the wrinkles and stuff like that. Yeah, it's not looking too good. Might go even lower, this resolution. I think I got too greedy. Tried to make that topology too high of a resolution. All right, we'll go back down to the bend and stiffness that we were at before. Maybe back closer to the density. Somehow I messed up the values quite a bit. I was thinking about doing something like that with the Burnout project, like a little intro or something. It's like in the parking lot, and the beast is veiled. Unveil the beast. But yeah, this is looking a little bit better. The frequency or whatever of these folds. So yeah, that's starting to look a little bit better. Yeah, I think it's like a weird, I don't know, I've never really seen anyone give the best guide to it, but it's a weird balance of like topology, settings and mass and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of pleats. You can also paint or like do noises or stuff like that to try to force specific patterns, but I've usually just tried to get it like naturally in the simulation or whatever. But yeah, this is feeling a little bit better. Kind of interesting how that the back of it is like already sticking out. Sometimes I see that in some of the stuff. Yeah, the Blender stuff is like, I don't, even Cinema, all the other software packages have really cool like tools for working with cloth interactively. I think Side Effects still doesn't really have that. Like, even with Cinema, I've seen people go in with like a transform tool and like jiggle stuff around, and like you can use it as more of a modeling tool without having to worry about a simulation cache and stuff. But yeah, the Blender fabric painting stuff would be cool to try out here on this. I might just move the frames forward a little bit more, see what we get. It looks like it moved the wrinkles and stuff a little bit closer to everything. But yeah, it's starting to be a little bit better. So I think if you want to, some people work this way. They even have the tool for it, I think. This vellum drape. People will basically perform your initial simulation. This is a DOP network and cache and everything in one. So we could replicate it, or if you wanted to, you could have just used this. This is like their intention with that modeling stuff. But yeah, we could do the Vellum IO. This is just their built-in file cache node or whatever. For Vellum specifically, it's just getting rid of extra attributes and things like that. I might, instead of doing the frame, I might just keep the name of this operator, or the node name, and just save this single frame, the current frame. Oof. Didn't work. Maybe it wanted it was demanding constraints before. It was unhappy it didn't have them. I think it's working now. Yeah. So that's another thing that people would do, is use this kind of stuff to do multiple simulations. So like once you find your landing spot or your final resting pose, I could just copy our simulation settings and everything, and then reapply them down here. So now I could go back to the first frame, and inside of here, if I just did the maybe pop wind, maybe just pop force. So maybe instead of just a noise, I'll also add a upward and backwards kind of direction to everything. So just to kind of rip it off. The ghost is waking up. Looks like he got stuck on his headlight for the side mirror. Oh no. It's like he's holding a tissue or something. Whoops. Alright. So maybe getting some less noise. Might just be the initial setting is like already a bit. That's why you might want to use the peak node or something to move it away from the vehicle a little bit. Let me try maybe not as upward of a force, maybe just like less noise and just sliding it this way. Might not be fast enough. Got stuck again. He started driving before his before they took the thing off. So yeah, I think we're gonna want to do the peak maybe. You could also, for this one, reduce the edge length. But I think doing a little bit of peak would help. Pop that in. That is just a little too much. Maybe something like that. Yeah, I guess that doesn't help as well. Because you're basically saying to keep the edges that long, so I guess it's not as good of an idea to do that. Let me see how this goes, but yeah, I have a feeling we might want to have cached out the constraints, because that will store basically the original material properties. So basically we've like permanently destroyed our cloth, and that area is like permanently stretched out the method that we're doing it right here. Whoops, get back into the main view. So yeah, I think it's just hung up on the start of everything right now. You could do another pin constraint and like manually animate it. So maybe we'll take a look, try that out. So I think if I just sort, yeah, I'll do that after I set up this animation. So I'll just do a sort by Z, I think. Let me see what happens here. I'm basically trying to get point number 0 to be the group. So then if I just rotate it like that, we should be able to rip things off. I can do another constraint. If we want to, I think we can even do it like that. Doesn't really matter with the collisions, it's just being preserved or whatever. So this one, do pin. Match animation. We could leave it as soft. And then the group could just do 0. So I think here, if I just do like an expression, the $FF, I think we want to keep it over on the main cloth tab. So it's working. All right, so let's get the constraints this time. I think we're going to do text, geometry, and constraints. And then we're just going to go back to... You'd probably want to set this up with like a time shift or something to make sure you're saving a specific frame. I'm just working a little bit fast. Bad. I'm using a bad workflow. Yeah, this drape one. Could even, I don't know, we could switch over to that. We want to, and just see what happens. I haven't really changed any of the settings on here, except for the ground plane. So yeah, let's just experiment with this drape, see what happens. Yeah, so we just want the ground plane. I'm gonna turn off that for right now. You could play it, and then once you find a good frame, you could freeze it like that. I think so. Oh, so this time scale. That one will get you, right? It's a bit of a trick they tried to put in there. So I think we were up to frame 48 or something like that. But yeah, the idea here is with the preserving the constraints to do your secondary simulation, you're preserving the initial state of the cloth instead of picking it up with like its weird stretched one. So something like this is good enough. I think we're in frame 42. So you could save it here. We could even do it like that. We're going to just keep reusing this stuff. Looks like it's working. And then we just want to be certain that we're keeping the constraints. So I don't need this node anymore. I don't know if this sort method is probably going to mess up my selection, so I'll just do the group transfer. Like the constraints and everything are based off of the point number, so you don't want to change it if you're working with the initial constraints. So I'll just make thin. This one will be a point group. It will be 0.0. There it is. We got a better point this time. Then I can just do the group transfer. That one. And then instead of 0, do pin. And the same for the motion. I don't know if you have to change where you insert the collision. I think it will still get fed through, right? We could examine. Yeah, I think it's kind of misleading because like if you're merging and you bypass it, you only get the one wire, but I think with these, because it's the multiple inputs, you can toggle them on and off and you don't have to rewire. This is kind of I don't know, depending on how you prefer to work, it can either be confusing or convenient. This does appear a bit confusing when you like just look at this area or whatever. So I just turned off the other forces inside of it, and I just only have the pin, the animated pin, moving everything around right now. So it is a bit of a tease. I have seen some of the photography like references and stuff when I was looking around. Let me get rid of the wireframe. Like some of the photography, sometimes they'll crop in like this. It's a pretty cool composition or whatever. The ultimate so the all around tease or whatever, just the lighting and cloth and everything like that. But yeah, let's keep moving with this animation. So you can see that there is some of that artifacts. This type of stuff you can usually fix with like a subdivide. But again, just if you were to be able to work at a higher resolution, if you have a better computer, I think like a Threadripper for Vellum simulations should be better than the processor that I have. It doesn't use the GPU as much as like Pyro does. But yeah, it looks like it's doing a better job with that headlight for the side mirror, rear view mirror, whatever you want to call it. Did it fly away? It's going through the So yeah, I think the rotation going through the vehicle didn't like being inside of a collision. It's vibing. So yeah, I think might want to switch it so that over time dubstep point. Let me actually try switching this method maybe to the soft transform. I think this method should be a little bit better. We could keep the same expression. This is just like a soft selection. Sometimes sometimes I'll do FF-1, so that just starts at 0, or basically it won't move it until the simulation starts. And then maybe do the same thing with the Z. We just need to change the amplitude. Yeah, the soft transform is pretty useful. It's kind of like in Maya, they have the soft selection set or whatever. Depending on what you're doing, yeah, it can be very useful. So you could do even, I don't know how well this would work, but you can change the radius of how much stuff is selected and get all kinds of good animations. All right, let's do a flip book. Let's see what we get. It's looking a little bit better already. I don't know. Yeah, I guess the pivot, moving that back as well could have, I guess it's kind of the same idea, translating it, like it's just the, I guess, order of operations, but moving the pivot back probably would have been better. Still a bit jittery. Oof, something happened. It doesn't like that for whatever reason. Might be, I think it's because my pin, I still have the one pin even though I did my soft transform. So the cloth solver is only updating that 1 point, even though I'm trying to do the soft transform. Does that make sense to people? So it's like the constraint only got applied to that 1 point. unfortunately. Oh, that's not very good. Yeah, so up here I'm just doing pin. I think what you would want to do is pin more things and then maybe change the stiffness of it. Let's see what happens if we pin everything. I think, let me see if we can do it. Doesn't work there. With this distance along geometry, for my start points, I can use that pin, and then we get another fall off like that, just the distance. I think I can work with this and use it over here if we look at the constraints. What we did with the pin, we have a bunch of pins and then they each have their own stiffnesses. So I think I can get rid of this orientation pin type. I'm just going to do an attribute transfer. Before I do that, I just want to promote this dist value from a point to primitive. So let's see if it worked. Looks like it copied over. So you just control middle mouse button on the node to get this info to pop up. Then you can click on attributes to visualize them. So now if I do a primitive wrangle, you could look at, sometimes as well I just set it into the color. So if we set that color equal to the dist, then we see we have that. I probably just want to remap it. We'll do like fit. See how that looks. So I'm just trying to flip it around. So basically this white area is going to be the full strength, and then I'm going to multiply this against the existing stiffness. So maybe something like that. Yeah, so we have stiffness. I only want to do this for the pin things that we just made. So I think in here I have to set the type again to pin. It looks like it's still being applied, it's just overlapping with the other geometry, so it's a bit hard to see what's going on. But you can see with the pins, our color attribute is still changing. Lost in the sauce here. So we just take stiffness, this one right here, and we can just multiply it against this value. So multiply the stiffness with this and then put the result back into the stiffness attribute. And then again, if we want to just verify, just look at some of these pins. Whoops. Bring that back up, put it on top. You can see certain ones are getting set to 0. I don't know if it will work, but it's worth it's worth a try. Let's see. It's looking a little better. I don't know about some of those. Little gnarly. So it's possible I want to let me visualize this a little bit. So I'm just thinking I want a bigger radius to be still kept at a value of 1. The points are from under the bumper. Yeah, it might be I need to do more animation. I'm gonna just try this and see if it works. But yeah, it might also be just my animation. I need to do more of like that kind of motion instead of ripping it back. The other thing I was thinking is just because like we're doing a radial fall off from a single point, that I might have been getting like artifacts of certain ones. But yeah, it looks like they're getting stuck. I think here, let's try that pivot maneuver. Maybe we have to go the other way. I'm going to try adjusting the just going to do a keyframe. All right. Houdini artists hate to use keyframes. Let's see what happens with it. It's a good catch, Mr. Jabram. Yes, it's just the source animation that we were parenting it to was a bit problematic. It looks fixed. I think so. All right. Let's do the flip book. Should fix all the spasms. So my animation is a little cartoony. All right, I'm gonna change some other stuff. So I'm gonna take this distance here and just really reduce the range so that it's just getting like a small segment at the tip. Getting there. And I might be able, I don't know. This stuff doesn't really matter too much because it's basically the soft transform is getting applied or replicated using these constraints. And then I think the one thing that I would want to change here is just my keyframe. So after a set amount of time, then I do, whoa, click the wrong button. Then I do want to start sliding it back. Whoa. All right, it's like unpeeling a banana. So let's give this a try. Yeah, so I think it's a bit more realistic to just have like the pin either set to fully on or off, like before I had too much of a gradient or like a transition. So it's just an unrealistic way to be like pulling at cloth if you're like saying just follow 10% of the pin. Does that make sense? Like it's a bit odd to be when you're moving cloth in real life, you're either actually yanking it and pulling it, or it's not adhering to the constraint. Looks like his tire is was a bit of an issue. It didn't completely blow up though. So yeah, it's possible we still want to use the peak node a little bit. Could be a substep issue or something as well. It's like just moving the cloth is too fast can cause those issues. All right, let's try to get the peak back in the main chain. And let me see what happens here. I think we should be... I think it should be okay. Let's might just do a little bit extra on the peak, just to be careful. All right. Give it a try. It's looking promising, but it's hard to say yet. So the peak node is moving everything along the surface normal. Like if you, I guess my camera position moved. But we're basically just shifting things, like offsetting it from the surface a little bit. I don't know if it looks like it's not having tremendous success, but Yeah, so my thought was like even with the under the bumper area, like things that were too close or already inside of the vehicle, um, it could have helped resolve that issue. Yeah, if you just look at it, like zoom in, it's just kind of inflating it along the normal direction somewhat. I might go back down with that, and I think might just have to go, maybe just try 4 substeps and see what happens. So the substeps is like the laziest way to fix this stuff, but sometimes it's the only option. Basically all the other operations, the substeps increase how many times that happens as well. So even doing like collision resolving, I don't know why we got this buff at the start. Did I forget to chain something in? I don't know if my grouping got messed up. Unless there's like initial velocity on the stuff. It's pretty weird. The vehicle is trying to disrobe itself. But yeah, I was saying that, so the increasing substeps will basically give it more chances to resolve these collisions. So like the inner penetrations or tangling and stuff like that can sometimes get sorted out a little bit more clean instead of, I don't know, you can't see it in the other one, but like once things cross each other, then you'll just run into a bunch of problems. It's like a gust of air came in. It's possible changing the collision type might help. This is maybe a little bit like problematic geometry, like it's quite angular and has some edges. I haven't ever really played around with changing the collision type though. I'm not sure, like I don't even think it's using the volumetric collision type. I think it's using more like surface based, but I haven't done too much investigations above just like this simple shrink wrapping and cleaning up of things. But yeah, it looks like the substeps helped it figure out that source, this tangling. It's possible doing some other optimizations like collision type, setting it to metaball, or other things you might be able to fix it that way before resorting to increasing substeps. I'm not sure why that initial stuff happened. One thought is like this velocity here is like if it's inherited. It doesn't make sense why it would only show up when I'm changing the settings to increase substeps though. I also disabled the peak. I don't know if like that had something to do with it. Is once it figured out that there was another gap, it tried to settle back down on the vehicle. Looks like it's still happening. It might have to do with just increasing the substeps in general. Maybe I would want to do this drape simulation with more substeps as well to fix that. But might be, I'm just gonna move this stuff back. Might be for another time to try that. I'm gonna save the file again. I think it's gonna be it for me today. So yeah, I'll put this scene into the Discord. It's a little delayed, but I did upload yesterday's reaction diffusion fun. Got some interesting stuff in there, so that Houdini files in the stream archive channel as well. There's a fun pattern kind of effect to play around with. Yeah, there's a detangle in the Vellum post process. So as part of the layer collision passes, that would run a detangle. So running more iterations of the detangle can sometimes fix that, but sometimes it if once you like become too tangled, you reach a point of no return. Yep, hopefully a bit of a cozy stream. I think my plan right now is to take tomorrow off and just recover. Just take tomorrow off and spend some time vibing, just chilling out a little bit. So I'm gonna be back Wednesday, back to the regularly scheduled thing. I'll update my schedule to reflect that, and I'm gonna try to set this up with a raid to send everyone over to Arvid. Looks like he just signed on a couple minutes ago or something. I don't know if he's in Houdini or not, but he's the one I was showing of the what was it, the Jurassic Park looking bug in the amber. So yeah, send everyone over there. Have a good rest of the weekend, everyone.